On April 9th, 2026, the global financial system is digesting a terrifying reality. While mainstream media anchors distract you with surface-level political theater, a massive, invisible wealth transfer is happening right under our noses. Across the Atlantic, Europe is rapidly deindustrializing, caught in a fragmented ceasefire trap and crippled by exorbitant energy costs. As factories go dark in Germany and France, trillions of dollars in capital are fleeing the continent, searching for a safe haven. And where is that money going? It is pouring directly into American technology giants. Right now, space exploration technologies and artificial intelligence startup xAI are eyeing a combined valuation of $1.75 trillion. Wall Street is telling you this is the dawn of a utopian future where machines do all the thinking and humans are liberated from the burden of labor. But welcome to Prism News, where we do not buy the corporate press releases. I am here to tell you that the artificial intelligence revolution is the greatest economic illusion of the 21st century. The intelligence powering these trillion-dollar valuations is not artificial at all. It is entirely human. And it is being extracted through a brutal system that treats middle-class knowledge workers like digital coal miners. Recently, explosive revelations from AI whistleblower Karen Howe have ripped the mask off Silicon Valley. The secret that big tech does not want you to know is that behind the sleek interfaces of the latest language models, there is no autonomous superbrain. Instead, there is a vast, hidden, global army of human beings sweating over screens, explicitly manually typing out the logic, identifying the images, and correcting the code that makes the machine look smart. The industry calls this reinforcement learning from human feedback, but economists who understand the real mechanics call it what it actually is: the digital sweatshop. And the most disturbing part is that the people being forced into these digital sweatshops are the very same professionals who just lost their jobs to the algorithm. How did the brightest minds of our generation get tricked into digging their own economic graves? I will explain exactly how the trap snaps shut in the next segment. But first, I want to ask you a question. Have you noticed a sudden shift in the types of jobs being advertised on your professional networks? Let me know in the comments, because the data is alarming. If artificial intelligence is truly as self-sufficient as the elite venture capitalists claim, then the labor market data should reflect a surge in highly specialized algorithmic engineers. But the data tells a completely contradictory story. If you look closely at recent analytics from the professional networking platform LinkedIn, the fastest growing job category is not machine learning architect or robotics director. It is a title that sounds intentionally vague: data annotator. What exactly is a data annotator? It is a modern-day assembly line worker, but instead of putting hubcaps on cars, they are labeling the real world so the machine can understand it. They are drawing digital bounding boxes around stop signs in videos. They are writing step-by-step essays on how to solve complex legal disputes. They are correcting the terrible poetry generated by early-stage algorithms. Big tech corporations want you to believe that this work is done by a few part-time contractors. The reality is that millions of people are now logging into anonymous web portals completely stripped of their professional identities to perform mind-numbing repetitive tasks for pennies per click. And who are these people? They are not just entry-level workers. We are seeing reports of former junior lawyers, copywriters, graphic designers, and mid-level medical diagnosticians logging onto these platforms. These are highly educated individuals who invested tens of thousands of dollars into university degrees. When their industries adopted automated tools to cut costs, these professionals were laid off. Facing soaring rent prices and inflation, they turned to the gig economy out of sheer desperation. They have been downgraded from respected experts to nameless ghosts in the machine. We are witnessing the intentional destruction of the knowledge economy, transforming an entire generation of intellectuals into the equivalent of 19th century textile mill workers. But how does this vicious cycle actually function mechanically? Let us break down the 4 stages of the most toxic financial loop ever engineered by Wall Street. To understand why the stock market keeps hitting all-time highs while your purchasing power collapses, you must understand the artificial intelligence strip mining loop. It operates in 4 distinct, ruthless phases. Phase 1 is the career freeze. A major corporation quietly implements an algorithmic tool and lays off 20% of its white-collar workforce. The company saves hundreds of millions in salaries, their profit margins explode, and Wall Street rewards them with a massive surge in their stock price. Phase 2 is the gig economy coercion. The laid-off experts, armed with their mortgages and mounting debt, realize that traditional hiring has completely frozen. Desperate for any income, they sign up for anonymous global contracting platforms. Their high-value human capital is instantly repriced as cheap, disposable labor. Phase 1 and 2 lead directly into Phase 3, which is model training. This is the darkest part of the loop. These desperate professionals are now tasked with fixing the errors of the very machines that replace them. A laid-off junior lawyer is paid $3 an hour to correct the legal citations of an AI system. By doing this, they are permanently transferring their years of human experience and intuition into the non-physical algorithm. They are actively sharpening the blade that cut them. Finally, we reach phase 4, the valuation consolidation. Once the project is finished and the model is trained, the gig worker is abruptly deactivated with zero severance and zero benefits. They are left psychologically drained and financially ruined. Meanwhile, the tech corporation now owns a permanently smarter algorithm that requires zero sick days. The wealth has been successfully transferred from the working class straight to the top, creating the trillion-dollar empires we see today. Wall Street loves this loop. It is the ultimate efficiency engine. But it relies on a fundamental destruction of human leverage. And as we will see, this system is designed to prevent you from ever fighting back. During the Industrial Revolution, when factory workers were subjected to horrific conditions, they had one ultimate weapon: geography. They worked in the same physical building. They could talk to each other, organize, form labor unions, and eventually strike to demand fair wages and basic human rights. The architects of the digital sweatshop studied history, and they specifically designed their new system to ensure that physical solidarity is permanently impossible. In the artificial intelligence gig economy, the workforce is intentionally atomized. A displaced marketing executive sitting in a cramped apartment in New York is staring at a screen competing for the exact same micro-task as a desperate college graduate in the global south. They do not know each other's names. They do not share a break room. They communicate only with an automated dashboard that dictates their tasks and their payout. If the worker in New York demands a higher rate for writing a complex prompt, the algorithm simply bypasses them and assigns the task to someone halfway across the world willing to do it for 50 cents. This is the absolute death of bargaining power. Big tech companies use shadow layers of third-party contracting agencies to distance themselves from the labor violations. If you look at the balance sheet of a major tech giant, they claim to have only a few thousand highly paid employees. But through these shell contracting firms, they actually command a ghost army of millions. The workers have no health insurance, no retirement plans, and no legal recourse if the algorithm suddenly decides to terminate their account. It is a global race to the bottom where human desperation is the primary fuel source for Silicon Valley. And this brings us to a terrifying historical parallel. We are not moving forward into a bold new future. We are spiraling backward into the dark ages. If you step back and look at the macro structure of this economy, you will realize we have returned to a state of feudalism. Hundreds of years ago, wealth was entirely determined by the ownership of physical land. The kings and the lords owned the fertile soil, and the peasants, known as serfs, were allowed to live on it only if they surrendered the majority of their harvest to the lord. The serf owned nothing and was tied to the land by pure necessity. Today, the soil has been replaced by data and computational power. The new lords are the elite tech billionaires who own the massive server farms, the vast data lakes, and the proprietary large language models. The middle class has been downgraded to digital serfs. We spend our days generating data, creating content, and labeling images on platforms owned by the lords. We forfeit our intellectual harvest in exchange for access to the digital ecosystem. And just like the feudal lords of the past, these tech monopolies fiercely defend their territory. They build massive moats around their artificial intelligence models, ensuring that no small business can ever compete. If a local company wants to survive, they cannot build their own intelligence. They must rent it from the tech lords, paying monthly subscription fees that act as a modern-day tax. We are witnessing the total enclosure of the digital commons, but the destruction does not stop in the virtual world. The artificial intelligence machine is fiercely hungry, and its appetite is destroying the physical environment around us. We are told that software is clean, that the cloud is invisible, and that artificial intelligence is a green technology. This is another catastrophic lie. Artificial intelligence does not live in the clouds. It lives in massive concrete bunkers filled with thousands of servers that run incredibly hot and require titanic amounts of electricity and water to cool down. A single large-scale data center consumes the same amount of power as a medium-sized city, and the corporations building these facilities are quietly shifting the physical costs onto the local taxpayers. Look at the recent reports coming out of Memphis, Tennessee. Bloomberg and other independent outlets have documented how local communities are suffering the physical consequences of the AI boom. Residents living near newly constructed mega data centers have reported smelling hazardous gas leaks seeping into their neighborhoods. The tech giants demand that local municipalities upgrade their power grids to support these massive server farms. But who pays for the upgraded power lines and the increased utility rates? The local citizens do. The corporate elites siphon the profits back to their headquarters in California, while the working-class communities in Middle America are left dealing with the noise pollution, the strained water resources, and the toxic externalities. It is the classic capitalist maneuver. privatize the profits, and socialize the damages. But the crisis is not just environmental. It is deeply embedded in the federal economic data that dictates your cost of living. To understand the full scope of this trap, we have to look at the macroeconomic data released today, April 9th, 2026. The Personal Consumption Expenditures Price Index, or PCE, is the preferred inflation gauge of the Federal Reserve, and the numbers are acting exactly as predictive macro theory warned. Because of the geopolitical chaos, the fragmented ceasefires, and the severe disruptions to the global energy and logistics supply chains, inflationary pressure is refusing to die down. The PCE is showing that inflation is stubbornly anchored well above the 2% target. This creates a lethal trap for the chairman of the Federal Reserve. Wall Street has been hallucinating, praying for massive interest rate cuts to keep the stock market party going. But with inflation running hot, the Fed is paralyzed. They cannot drastically cut rates without causing the price of groceries and gasoline to explode even further. So interest rates remain punishingly high. Who suffers in a high interest rate environment? The small local businesses on Main Street, the bakeries, the contractors, the independent clinics. They cannot afford the cost of borrowing capital, so they go bankrupt or stop hiring. But you know who does not care about high interest rates? Big tech. They are sitting on mountains of pure cash generated from their digital monopolies. They do not need bank loans. In fact, they earn massive interest on their cash reserves. This macro environment acts as a chemical accelerant, destroying the traditional economy while funneling even more power to the tech lords. They buy up the distressed real estate left behind by bankrupt small businesses and turn them into more data centers. It is a perfect closed-loop system of wealth extraction. And they are building this infrastructure not just to sell you ads, but to fulfill highly lucrative government contracts. The most chilling aspect of the digital sweatshop is what the end product is actually used for. Gig workers believe they are just labeling pictures of crosswalks or summarizing medical documents. But the underlying models they are training are being quietly weaponized. Take a look at the recent legal battles involving major AI firms like Anthropic. Civil liberties groups and internal critics are raising the alarm about how these powerful generative models are being integrated into military and government surveillance systems. The technology that was marketed to the public as a tool to help humanity write better emails and cure diseases is increasingly being adapted for defense contracts, predictive policing, and mass data analysis. The civilian labor force, the desperate middle-class professionals taking on micro-tasks to pay their rent, are inadvertently building the ultimate control grid. They are teaching the machine how to analyze human behavior, how to predict dissent, and how to identify targets. The state and the tech monopolies have merged their interests. The government gets access to unprecedented surveillance capabilities, and the tech lords secure billions of dollars in taxpayer-funded defense contracts. The technology is no longer just about economic efficiency. It is about absolute geopolitical dominance, and it is being built drop by drop by the sweat of the very citizens it will eventually monitor. But there is a fatal flaw in this grand design. A mathematical impossibility that threatens to bring the whole system crashing down. Here is the fatal vulnerability of the AI capitalist model. It is a snake eating its own tail. The global economy is entirely dependent on consumer spending. Historically, the middle class has been the engine of this spending. You earn a fair salary at a decent job, and you use that money to buy a house, purchase a car, go to restaurants, and buy the consumer goods that keep the corporate wheels turning. But if big tech continues to relentlessly automate white-collar jobs and downgrade millions of professionals into the gig economy where they earn unstable poverty wages, who is going to buy the products? If the lawyers, the accountants, the artists, and the engineers are all stripped of their disposable income, who will click on the advertisements that generate revenue for these trillion-dollar algorithms? You cannot run a consumer economy without consumers. The digital sweatshop model is highly profitable in the short term because it slashes payroll expenses, but it is fundamentally suicidal in the long term. By destroying the purchasing power of the middle class, these tech giants are actively destroying the demand curve for their own clients. Wall Street is blinding itself to this reality, distracted by the illusion of infinite growth and the hype of artificial intelligence. They are celebrating the reduction of labor costs while ignoring the complete collapse of consumer velocity. When the music finally stops and the realization hits that the middle class is too broke to consume, we will face a severe deflationary recession, unlike anything seen since the 1930s. So how do you survive a system that is actively designed to strip mine your intellect and your wallet? At Prism News, we do not just analyze the crisis, we provide the defensive protocol. The first rule is to wake up from the digital illusion. You must stop trading your time and your irreplaceable human experience to train the algorithms that will replace you. Reject the gig economy trap whenever physically possible. Second, you must alter your investment and career strategy immediately. Stop chasing the algorithmic hype. The smart money, the true financial elite, are quietly rotating their capital out of fragile software companies and into absolute hard assets. They are buying productive agricultural land, independent energy infrastructure, and scarce physical commodities. You must do the same on whatever scale you can afford. The virtual world is experiencing hyperinflation of content, meaning everything digital is becoming worthless. The physical world, however, is entering an era of extreme scarcity. Finally, regarding your career, you must pivot to skills that are fundamentally non-algorithmic. A machine can write a contract and it can analyze a spreadsheet. But a machine cannot look another human being in the eye and establish genuine trust. A machine cannot lead a team through a physical crisis. Empathy, high-stakes negotiation, physical craftsmanship, and deep human connection are the only assets that cannot be labeled by a digital sweatshop. You must become deeply, profoundly human. The wealth transfer of 2026 is unforgiving, but by understanding the true mechanics of the geopolitical and macroeconomic board, you can refuse to be a pawn. Thank you for tuning in to this extensive investigation on Prism News. If you value independent, objective analysis that cuts through the mainstream media smokescreen, make sure you subscribe to our channel. Share this video with anyone who needs to understand the real economy. Stay vigilant, stay grounded in reality, and I will see you in the next report.